Welcome to Sullivan Smart Sense. I'm your host, Heather Sullivan. Boy, we are going to have some fun today. We're going to have a really fun conversation. Have you ever thought that maybe you'd like to start your own business, but you're kind of nervous? Maybe you're thinking, well, I've got these kids to raise. Or maybe we'll have a recession. You probably have all these excuses in your head as to why you shouldn't do it. Well, today we're going to change your mind because you're going to be inspired by someone who has done all of that, launched a very successful business. And today she's launching a new book about how she turned $5 into a cupcake empire. We're going to be talking with Mignon François. And I'm so excited. I want to show you. This is her book. It's called Made from Scratch. So we'll be talking about her success story today. The lessons that you can learn from her success story, and we'll talk about what you can learn from her book as well. So please join me in welcoming Mignon François of the Cupcake Collection. It is so great to have you.
Thank you for having me. I feel like I'm amongst friends, and I feel like I'm right back home in Houston, Texas with you.
Yeah, that's so fun. So we were chatting before we came on. So you went to school here in Houston.
Yeah, I graduated from Houston Baptist.
Wow, that's so awesome.
That was a long time ago. My granddaughter said, was there color TV back then? Honey, that was 1999. It's so funny what they think is so far away.
I know. Yeah. I remember one of the favorite things I saw posted on social media was a mom posted that her daughter asked her, why is it called hanging up the phone? That takes us back, doesn't it?
Yes. I talked all about a dial tone, as I was writing this book. And then my editor was like, I'm not sure you have to explain dial tone. And I'm like, yeah, you do, because my 22-year-old doesn't know what dial tone. He's never experienced dial tone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Why do they call it hanging up the phone?
Yeah. Because we used to hang it. All right. Well, let's talk first about your story. And I want to just hear this fabulous story about what you were going through way back when. And you were down to your last $5. Talk to me about what was happening in your life and what inspired you to launch the Cupcake Collection.
Oh my gosh, this is such a great question. I was drowning in debt and brokenness. I was losing everything I had. The house that we were living in didn't have electricity on a regular basis. And I walked to the Kroger around the corner to buy water off the shelf in order to fill the tub for the babies. And then my house, on the day that we were opening the store, was up for foreclosure sale on the courthouse steps on the day that we opened the store. I think what happens is a lot of times we think we need so much more to get our business started. We need to have a degree. We need to have, a big, gigantic loan. We need to have all of this amazing equipment. But I'm just here to tell you, all you have is all you need to get you from where you are to where you want to be. And it was a knock on the door from my neighbor when I was sitting in the back of my house, stuffing cash into envelopes. Dave Ramsey calls that his baby steps plan. I was taking little baby steps to get us out of debt when she knocked on the door and asked me essentially to gamble the only $5 I had left that I was trying to manage for dinner for the week. This was my budget for the entire week. And it only figured out that I had $5 because I was putting money into these envelopes and I hadn't saved enough to feed my children. And so when I answered the door, I decided to take this opportunity that she was offering to me, not knowing how I really was going to do it when I closed that door. But I put my shoes on and walked to the store around the corner. And with that $5, bought everything that I could and turned it into 60 that day. Because as I turned in a little bit of product, she paid me a little bit of money. And then I turned that 60 into 600 by the end of the week. And I've been flipping that same money for the last 17 years. And we're now at over 5 million cupcakes sold.
Wow. That is a lot of cupcakes. And I like what you said about flipping the money, because I know that as you've moved through this, you have focus also on staying debt free,
Hmm.
which, I think is a challenging question for anyone with a business because, a lot of times you'll take on debt maybe to expand or what have you. But can you talk about your philosophy of just constantly flipping the money?
Yeah. I was raised to be fiscally responsible, but I think that when you enter into partnership with someone, they also have to have an understanding of that same responsibility. And so we were doing what looked like insane, expecting a different result while doing the same things. And
Hmm.
so when I decided to start hiding money in any place that I could and collecting money in order to make the ends meet, it was alone that I had to do it. Like I couldn't even tell the people in my household what we were up to. But my mom had punished me from my first credit card when I was 15 because she got a hold to the credit card bill that came in the mail, and she asked me, could I pay? She said, can you bring me the money to pay this bill? I think it was like $496 that I had run up on that
Really?
bill. It probably
Wow.
in like 1990,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't have all the money. And she said, well, bring me all of the things you brought, bring me the credit card, and I'll be keeping this paycheck. And so I learned from, from my mom, very hard lesson that you don't spend more than you make. And you always leave a little bit to save. And so sometimes you feel like you don't have, enough to make an emergency fund, and you find yourself stuck in just the everyday movement of life. And
Mhm.
that's where I was, to the point where then we didn't have enough for electricity, then we didn't have enough for field trip money, then we didn't have enough for gas. And at the end of the day, at some point, I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I decided, listen, now you can be sick or you can be tired, but you can't be both.
I love that. And I'm sure that you sound like you have such a positive attitude and positive energy. And it sounds like that really carried you through. And I know that you talk about in your book and in your philosophy filling a need, because as you were saying, you didn't really know anything about making cupcakes when you got started.
Hmm.
But the idea here is to find a need that needs to be filled, right?
Yes. That's what I love about business. Every business answers a problem, right? My
Mhm.
problem was I needed to get out of debt. But an even greater problem, besides wanting to have field trip money and gas to get my children to school, there was a need that my need was going to serve in the community. And I think when people find the need that needs to be filled, then they will also find success. We started this business in the middle of a recession, and you hear people talking about a recession right now or an economic downturn, right? And
Mhm.
it's like, how do you start a business when the economy is uncertain? I am the picture of economic uncertainty. This is what it looks like. It doesn't always look like standing somewhere with a sign saying that I will work for food. And while you want to help those individuals out, some of those people are sitting right next to you in a cubicle and they are working only for food. And that was my situation. We could work for food, but we couldn't work for the mortgage. We couldn't work for, gas money. And so a lot of times we think that what looks like crazy is like so far fetched. And for me, what looked like crazy was starting a business during an economic downturn. And
Mhm.
what it came to show me was that this is the perfect time to do it. When you find a point of desperation in you, you begin to look to the left and you look to the right for the lessons. And what I learned was that my need to celebrate, or my need to be seen, or my desire to have cake was also a need that I could feel in my community. And people began to look to me for things that were fresh made or homemade,
Mhm.
that wasn't touched by a lot of artificiality. And I began to fill a niche in my community as a bakery brand.
I think that is so amazing. And by the way, I want to invite our viewers, if you have any questions or comments, just write them below. We would love to chat with you while we have this conversation because we're here to answer your questions and inspire you today. Um, I think you touched on something that I remember especially covering when we had the Great Recession,
Mhm.
2008. So many people lost their jobs. It became necessary to find, something new to do. And we saw a lot of new businesses born out of, well, I need a job,
Yep.
you know. And so I think anyone who's fearing, well, we might have a recession, the inflation's so high right now, it's hard to get funding. What would you say to someone who's in particular concerned about being able to get funding for a business?
I believe that all you have is all you need to get you from where you are to where you want to be. I talk about this extensively in the book. And because I had initially studied science, and I couldn't apply the science to the human body, it was 17 years later in my kitchen that I realized, oh, I can apply this science to flour, sugar, butter, and eggs. And so every stupid thing that I ever had to do was taking me from where I was to where I was going to end up to be, not only so that I could make it, but so that I can open up the door so that other people could also make it. So I promised God, if He would make me successful, I would tell anybody who would listen about what they could do if they only believe. Listen, I couldn't even bake, not even out of a box, when I started the Cupcake Collection, and all these recipes are mine. And I remind people, and they laugh all the time when I say I am not a baker, I'm a scientist, but I learned to apply what I knew to what I needed. And that's what I want people to also know. I believe, Heather, that faith is currency, and it will perform for you just like money. They often have the same sort of characteristics. Faith and green money have some similar characteristics. And I saw during the pandemic that we just recently came out of, so many people were afraid. We were hit with staying at home all of a sudden, and we didn't know what we were going to do to make ends meet. And so we would meet on my Instagram page on every Monday night and talk about it. And people began, so many places where people were able to spend time with their children. People were able to find out little gifts and talents that they needed more time for. Some people needed more sleep. Some people needed more, opportunities. And so much creativity came out of the distress that people were going through. And
Mhm.
that's what I want people to know right now. No matter what happens, you're going to eat. And what I started realizing was I had a choice on what I wanted to eat, whether it was going to be this or that. Which direction I wanted to take was all up to me. And
Mhm.
so when I made a decision to come out of what we were going through, I had to decide what out looked like for me. And out for me looked like having electricity on a regular basis, and running water coming out of the faucet when I willed it to come on.
Mhm. Mhm. A lot of people are probably wondering how you managed to do this with 6 kids.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't know how you have 6 kids, period, but let's talk about running a business on top of
Yes.
having 6 kids.
Yeah, well, I have 7 now,
Oh, okay.
and I have 8 grandchildren, and when you couple that with all of my daughters and sons-in-laws, we are just of a huge magnitude. I think that having children teaches you something. My children were learning something watching their mom trying to live. And there's this saying that says, what happens in my house stays on the inside of my house. And when my children were going out to school, they were never complaining and saying, oh, poor me, we don't have this and we don't have that. They never told anybody, but what they knew sometimes was that they need to eat when they go to school, because we don't know what you're eating when you come home. And when my neighbor knocked on the door and gave me that opportunity, I turned that 5 into 60. Listen, I bought my babies potato chips and little Debbie's and ramen noodles and things that were luxuries in our household. But I'm from New Orleans, so the first thing I did was I inventoried what I could use that I already had in my house. And that's what I want people to know. I went to my cabinets and I saw, well, I always had rice on hand, because red beans and rice on Mondays was a staple. Well, this meant that we were going to have red beans and rice a little bit more than just on Mondays, right? But it also teaches you a lesson that what you have in your house can lead you into your purpose. And sometimes that means just what do you have in your wheelhouse? Like, what are your skills and what are your talents that can take you from where you are to where you want to be?
Hmm. And I know in your book you talk about some of the principles that you have, some advice, some steps people can take.
Yeah.
Um, can you talk a little bit about some of the things maybe that to help people get started, some principles to help them kind of push through and make it happen?
Yes. So I spell out for people the scientific method. And so I just went back to my past in order to inform my future. And so that's how you're going to start. So you start by looking at the lessons that you've learned or what are the things that you've been through, because everything that's happening to you is actually happening for you. So the first thing was to identify what the problem was, and then as you're going through the steps of the scientific method, one of the things is to test your hypothesis. So what I did was I went out into the community as I was figuring out this scientific baking, procedure that just landed in my lap. And I would walk up to real estate agents who were, coming into my neighborhood because they would tear down one house and put up 15 in its place. And my family was saying that it was good, but I just thought they loved me. And I wanted to see if other people really would love what I was doing. And so they would come back and knock on the door and say, where can I get more of this? And can I pay you for it this time? And so I think they'll have to go into the book to get, really in detail about how the scientific method can be applied to your business. But for me, it was really first figuring out what the problem is that I was going to solve and then testing the hypothesis for it. I've gotten a lot of knocks on my door at 10 o'clock at night, sometimes from husbands who have pregnant women at home who are like, look, I'm craving and you got to help me.
Desperate times call for desperate measures.
Yes.
I fully get it. You talked about, I like this, being a quitter, the need to be a quitter. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I was always quitting. And if I was going to quit on anything, I was going to quit on me. And one of the things I did was I looked at other successful people and I said, okay, God, do you love them more than me? I mean, why is it that they have options and they're luxurious and I don't even have electricity? And what I felt God saying to me was, are you willing to do what they do to get what they have?
Mm.
And are you willing to put in what they put in to get out what they get? And that, I understood, meant that work was going to be required of me. And when you're out here trying to figure out a business or how to make a dollar out of 15 cents, one of the things that people are thinking is the issue is that they're afraid to fail. But actually, what I want to present to you today is that you're afraid to succeed.
Mm.
And what happens when success comes, you got to show up when you don't feel like it. You've got to be on when your head is hurting, when you don't feel like being on, someone has hurt you or you've lost some things. But at the end of it, if you will stick to it, you will find that you were overcome, because as you look at more successful people, they don't tell you that their problems go away. Their problems just get bigger or the situations change because they're learning something in the journey. For me, I found joy in the journey. And then I felt God saying to me, hey, look, you can't even spell journey unless you have joy. And so I think sometimes we're looking at, the obstacles, but we don't take time to stop and smell the roses or laugh at the little things.
Yeah. And you talked too about being regimented. And I think that kind of steps off from what you were talking about sometimes it's, working when you're not feeling your best, showing up
Mhm.
all the time. But talk to me a little bit more about how being regimented is part of the key.
So my grandmother was a baker. She was a maker, a homemaker. And so she had to be really good at management. So she would go away and take care of someone else's home, and then someone else or her children needed to follow instructions on the inside of her house to make sure that the things that she wanted at her house were done. And so one of the things though about my grandmother is that when a grandma makes you a cake, it's not always going to be exactly the same as it was the last time. And
Yeah.
I knew that if I was going to open a business on this, that I needed to provide the same product with consistency every single time. And so even though I say, grandmas are like that, and I'm a grandmother today, I would say I'm a modern day grandmother who follows a list of instructions or measurements in order to see how far have we come. And I
Mhm.
think that was one of the things that helped me to get from where I wanted to be, is that I showed up at the same time every day, bringing all of me to the table. And that being even down to cracking open that Cupcake Collection door right on time at 9:30. And if we've missed a couple of things, you don't always have to have perfection. You just have to have progress.
Yeah. Um, as we're starting to wind things up a little bit, I wanted to ask, what was something that you kind of learned along the way that just really stuck with you, or maybe surprised you, or once you were in it, what was something that was a big takeaway for you?
That the biggest takeaway was that I thought that I needed all this big equipment. I thought I needed a really big, storefront. I thought I needed to have credit. I thought I needed to have money. All the things that I thought I needed to start my business were not the things that I needed to start my business. As a matter of fact, I talk about this extensively in the book. It was the health inspector who had come by to check on us, because it had been 2 years that we were working to get this store open before it ever even opened. And I think a lot of times when people see you showing up in interviews, or they see your name being flashed in lights on all kinds of places, they think you just showed up on the scene all of a sudden, that you were an overnight success. And I would say overnight success takes 10 years. I've been at this for 17 years of my life, which is leading me back to share with you some of the lessons that I've learned. But it was the health inspector who said, hey, this refrigerator was a dorm size refrigerator sitting in the room. Is this the refrigerator you're going to open your store with? And I was like, no, I'm going to order a big commercial refrigerator, knowing that I didn't have money for that, knowing that I didn't know when that was actually going to happen. He
Uh-huh.
said, will this one keep temperature? I said, yes. Can it hold your products at least even for a little while, even if you've got to get some of it right now and get some of it later on the day? I said, absolutely. He goes down, he starts writing down some stuff, and he hands me a yellow piece of paper and says, open whenever you like, which let me know that a dorm size refrigerator and a KitchenAid mixer is all you need to open up a bakery business, if that's what you have. And I later would need big commercial mixers. I later would need big commercial refrigeration. I later would need a walk in freezer, but that would have one day, but I didn't need it on day one.
I love that. I think that is a huge takeaway, to just start working with what you have. And lastly, so what inspired you to write a book about all this?
So many people were asking me to write my story down. We get tours through the Cupcake Collection, both in both cities, all the time. And people are shipping our cupcakes all around to tell this story of a woman who believed. And if you don't tell people the story, they will make up a story for themselves. And I just wanted to really help people have the facts in hand as they're telling other young women who are just like me, or other young men who might be stuck, that who feel like, I'm 33, just like I was when I started this business, that they're too old. I want them to know that statistics show that people who start their businesses in their mid to late 30s, even 40s, have more success and less failure, because they have experiences in their belt, and they have connections and opportunities that younger people aren't able to see. The other thing, it was for other women. I get calls, Heather, and social media DMs from women all over the world. In the middle of the night, I might hear from a woman in the UK or in India or in Africa saying, I know that I have something too. And I was just like you. And this was my opportunity for me to say, me too. So if they need to collide with me wherever they are and whatever time of day it is, or wherever places, because you can't be in all the places all of the time, right? I wanted them to know that I was where they were. I didn't have filtered money either. I didn't have gas money either. I was losing my home also. I am a victim of domestic violence. But what I won't be What I won't stand in is victimhood. What I want to stand in is victory. And what I want people to know is that what happened to you actually happened for you. And I want people to realize that it doesn't have to make you bitter if you allow it to make you better.
Wonderful, wonderful note to end things on. What a great conversation. I can't thank you enough. So inspirational. And again, folks, her book is called Made from Scratch, just coming out today. And you can
Yes.
go to the cupcakecollection.com there on your screen if you want to get more information. Mignon, it has been so fun and so wonderful to have you here with us. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you so much, Heather. And I just want to remind people that with this being Mother's Day coming up this weekend, what a great gift to offer a mother who's trying to start her business or needs a little bit of encouragement. You can get her cupcakes and you can get her made from scratch, Finding Success Without a Recipe.
Yeah, because you got to eat the cupcake and read the book. That's the best way to enjoy it. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Mignon. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Heather.
And thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We really appreciate it. And of course, just keep sending those topics and questions to me. We will continue to try and answer all your questions here on Sullivan Smart Sense. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time.